Welcome. We're going to get underway in just a moment. So if you are just joining, hang tight. We're going to give our other attendees here a chance to join over the next minute or so. You know what, while we wait, feel free to drop a quick hello in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. So here at Function Software, we are coast to coast. So for my part, I am joining you today from Prince Edward Island on Canada's East Coast, where it is a brisk but beautiful blue sky day.
Thanks, Alec. And as usual, folks, I'm joining from Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, where we've had to scrape the car 3 out of the last 4 days. So getting chilly. Welcome to winter.
Now we are still seeing a few folks trickle in. I'll give it another minute here before we kick off. All right, well, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for this today, whether your agency is powered by Function Point or Function Fox, or perhaps you've yet to try the product. We're glad you could be here for our last Thought Leadership webinar of 2025. In fact, year end is the topic of the day, as in a few minutes here, we're going to be moderating a pretty insightful discussion all about wrapping up the year at your agency so you can effectively plan for the future. So my name is Alec McLeod. I'll be one of your moderators today. When I'm not co-hosting webinars with my colleague, Sean, I work as a product specialist here at Function Software. And again, with me as always is our venerable Director of Customer Experience, Sean Harris. Sean, how are things out your way this morning?
Like I said, Alec, a little bit chilly, but very, very happy to be here. And yeah, folks, definitely very grateful that you all have joined us for this last Thought Leadership webinar for this year. For those that have been to the rest of them this year, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sticking around for these. It's always something that Alec and I really enjoy doing. We'll continue doing them, for the years to come, but what a way to wrap up.
Well, great. So to set the stage for our discussion, we are going to start immediately with just a quick warm-up poll. You should see it on your screen right now, actually. So just one question with a few options to pick from, and that question is, which of these areas causes your agency the most year-end stress? So again, you should hopefully see the question and a list of options on your screen now. And while we wait for the responses to roll in, I'm going to just quickly power through some housekeeping items. First is that we, of course, welcome questions in the chat at any time today. Though as a reminder, it is a moderated discussion between Sean, myself, and our guest panelists. So we might not be able to respond in real time, but we have reserved Q&A time at the end. So we'll be able to address your questions directly then. And then second, a reminder that today's webinar, as always, is being recorded, and a link is going to be shared out afterwards. But you all will also see it on our YouTube channel shortly, where you can also find all of our previous and, dare I say, fantastic thought leadership webinars from 2025. Let's give that poll one other second here. And somewhat unsurprisingly, the area causing the most year-end stress for our audience today is financial reconciliation, which is something good to keep in mind as we are going to discuss a lot of these topics today. All right, I'm going to close the poll there. Thank you for your participation. And Sean, over to you, my friend.
All right, Alec, thank you so much. Folks, hope everyone can see the screen here. Somebody wants to just throw something in the chat, letting me know that, that we're good to go. That'd be fantastic.
Good to go.
All right, Kathy, thank you so much. Beautiful. All right, folks, like Alec had said, welcome to our year-end agency health check. Really excited for the session, mostly because this really sets up every group that we work with for success for the coming year. Alec had mentioned I'm the Director of Customer Experience here at Function Software. That's both Function Point as well as Function Fox. My bread and butter is making sure that that agencies are doing well, getting the most out of our platform, but more importantly, just thriving as businesses in general. So what we're really going to be talking about today with two industry experts are sort of those key pieces, those key factors that we need to pay attention to when closing out the year. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our wonderful panelists. Today, I've got Lori Mikas with us. She's the COO and partner of Second Wind, someone that has worked with Function Point throughout our life cycle as well. But absolutely thrilled to have her. And we have Craig Cardellino, who is Director of Marketing and Operations at TRG. If you've been a part of these thought leadership webinars in the past, Craig has been a friendly and frequent face and is always willing to give us a bit of time, but he's working for a very, very large agency, lots of moving parts. He's really our guy on the ground. So he's going to walk us through some of his experience. Lori, Craig, you guys want to say hello to the group?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today. Scrolled through the list of attendees and I see a lot of familiar names. So to those of you I know, hello. To those of you that I don't know, maybe I'll have a chance to interact with you in the future. As Sean said, I am COO at Second Wind. We're an organization that serves smaller to mid-sized agencies in many ways, whether it's consulting or content or training. And I've been on board at Second Wind for almost 30 years, which is hard to believe. And while I lament how many years that's been, I will say it has allowed me to see a lot of the changes, a lot of the trends, a lot of the way that our industry has evolved. And there have been many ways over the past 30 years. So I'm looking forward to participating today and sharing whatever knowledge I can to help you with your year-end closeout and moving into 2026.
Lori, thank you so much. Yeah. Craig, you want to say hello to the group?
Yeah, hello, everyone. Thank you to Sean and Alec, of course, for having me again. And my wife keeps asking, why do they keep asking you back? You can't believe this. People are sick of hearing. No, I'm just kidding. I work at TRG. So we're a large content creation studio out in Cleveland, Ohio. We span the industries across the globe, agencies, brands, and we are delivering photography, video production, CGI, set design, virtual production, just really any and all ways that you can want to create assets. We can create those for you. We can work with you to come up with creative designs, whatever you may want. So yeah, happy to be here and I'm honored to be asked again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Craig. And you can tell your wife we're going to keep bothering you over and over again. You're always very much welcome to help us out with these things. Always love having you, buddy. All right, folks. So a lot of great topics today. We're going to kick it off with the why. I come from a teaching background. To me, there is nothing more important than explaining the why. So why does it matter? Like, why does a year-end audit, why is it important? Kind of sounds self-evident. I get it. But there's still some folks that will just continue to sort of ride through the end of the year and sort of move on to the next cycle. And that's fine. But really what we want to make sure is that we're taking some time to reflect, not only with our processes, but also taking a look at the general state of the business itself. As you can see the quote here, folks, clock is winding down on the fiscal year. It's not the time for guesswork or sticky note chaos. Really, it's a make or break moment. What does that actually mean, folks? I mean, we can sort of go from December to January for sure, not much of a problem. But taking that time, putting this as part of your process, folks will generally do a quarterly review. Incorporating a year-end review, it's just smart math, right? It's something that we can do to make sure that what we've done throughout the course of the year has been profitable. The processes we've had in place have actually worked. Really, this is the greatest time for us to reflect. So I'm going to actually put the first question here out to Craig. So Craig, in terms of operations at TRG, how do you guys approach year-end differently from, say, maybe a standard quarterly review that you guys might be doing?
Yeah, so it is quite different. There's a couple things at play here at TRG. Our last quarter of the year is chaos. And it's usually chaos because a lot of our clients are just unloading their budgets on us for the end of the year. They're trying to get as much as they can before the year closes. So we are doing probably almost half to maybe more than half of our revenue just in this last quarter. Maybe fudge the numbers a little bit there, maybe a little bit less than half, but it's significant, right? So we have that big aspect of trying to get everything done within this time we have left. On top of that, from the operations side, we're also trying to analyze everything that we've done for the year. We are a pretty data heavy company. So we like to be measuring as much as we can and analyzing that as well as we can in the hopes that we can make smarter decisions based off of it. So at the end of the year, we're pretty much recapping everything that's happened. I am looking at everything from utilization to profitability to just all of the normal metrics that we might go through quarterly, but now we're looking at it on a yearly basis. And we're going to start our planning for the next year based on what we saw this year and also based on what we're thinking next year will look like. So there's a lot going on here. The end of the year is, like I said in the beginning, it's chaos, but it's, it's exciting chaos.
Fantastic. I know us here, I mean, we do a quarterly review cycle as well. I will say, I mean, from my experience, it's almost like being a bit of a yo-yo, for lack of a better term. Like at the end of the year, you're sort of looking at that micro lens at what happened during the quarter, but then you really have to sort of push out and look at that macro lens just to see how everything went. That's kind of what my experience has been. That's similar to you, Craig,
Yeah.
or? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly the same. Feels like you're going all over the place and you're like, okay, we got to do this and we got to do this. But yeah, it's it's all for being smarter tomorrow, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful, Craig. Thank you so much. So folks, moving on to the next slide here. So again, sort of continuing on, why do year-end audits actually matter? Well, it's really about mindset, folks. The strongest agencies that we work with, they're not just reflecting at the end of the year, they're resetting. So like Craig had mentioned, it's sort of taking a look at everything that's happened. There's a lot of stuff happening at the end of the year, but taking that time to really make sure that you're starting the next year strong. You treat December as an opportunity to clean, reconcile, and align. Best thing I can say, folks, when your books are clean, your systems are current, data is trustworthy, you're going to start that new year in control instead of trying to play catch up. And, a really good analogy to this, I mean, typical middle-aged dad here, folks. I generally tinker with stuff on the weekend. I'll take things apart, play around in a workshop. I personally find the results that I come up with are much, much better when I'm working from a place of cleanliness, a place of clean, when I know where my tools are. It's the same thing in the agency, folks. Knowing where your tools are, knowing where you put the quote-unquote screws, knowing where everything is, it does nothing but set you up for success that next year. Lori, I want to put this one to you because you do deal with multiple agencies. You're sort of looking at this from that macro level. What would you say, and this is sort of a what shouldn't you do question, but what do you think is one thing that agencies should maybe stop doing at year end that's possibly creating a bit of unnecessary stress or redundancy in their workflows?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the year end for many agencies can be a busy time, whether it's clients unloading budgets, as Craig said, or, just everything that we are trying to handle before the new year rolls around. But I really firmly believe that agencies need to stop trying to fix everything in December. We kind of live our lives throughout the year. And we start saying to ourselves, oh, we should really do that, or we should really do this, financial reviews and looking at our numbers, et cetera. Yes, we need to get our books in order before the end of the calendar year or the end of our fiscal year. But I feel that agencies tend to let some of these things pile up and build on top of one another. And we try to, perform interference in December. Let's get this done. Let's get that done. Let's get this done. And I think it adds a lot of extra stress and a lot of extra layers of things that we could be taking care of throughout the year. Just as an example, when we look at all of the data that we collect on a regular basis, and we do what I would call micro cleanups, 15, 20 minutes getting into the system and making sure that we're reconciling or reviewing things, that gives you then a leg up as we move throughout the year, as opposed to, going back and trying to do all of that in December. So I'd say give yourselves a break Be proactive throughout the year and stop trying to quote unquote fix everything at the end of the year for a new year.
Fantastic advice, Lori. Couldn't agree more. I mean, we're going through something similar right now. We've got a bunch of initiatives that are currently happening in function software in general. But one thing I've noticed, though, I mean, and one thing I'll always try to push people with as well is the fact that, at the end of the year, you're not really going to fix anything. If you feel like you have to have that movement, get the plan ready for next year. Like, figure out what you want to do for those next 3 months and stick to it. But you're not going to fix anything in December. Most people are going out of the office anyway. Yeah. Excellent point, Lori.
Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. If I could jump in, I couldn't agree more with Lori. It's a fantastic point. Something that we stress here throughout the year is when you should be doing things correctly and when you should be cleaning things up. If you 100%. Wait until the end of the year, you're just piling more kind of just not busy work, but you know what I mean? Like you're just piling up a whole bunch more tasks that you have to get done in an already probably busy time. And that's really not the best time for it. The best time for that is when you're doing it throughout the year. Have, like she said, many micro cleanups. It is absolutely the best way to be handling all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And folks in the audience, if you are in that situation where you're trying to clean up, don't let this discourage you. And the way to sort of take this away is, get your plans in place for that cleanup, right? This is, again, a good time to reflect. What can you do over the next 90 days after the new year to really start setting yourself up for that success next year? We've all been there. We're humans. We've all been there. Use that time to reflect and get yourself ready. Folks, we're going to be mentioning a checklist throughout the course of this webinar. We will be sending out a follow-up after this that does include what that year-end checklist looks like, so don't worry. We are also going to be mentioning a lot of the other ebooks that we've used throughout the course of the year. So certainly, folks, if there's anything that you don't have access to that you haven't already received, feel free to reach out to your CSM. Feel free to reach out to your support contact. You can respond to the email that we send out. We'll make sure you get those ebooks. Alec, I'm going to pass it over to you for the next piece, which is the year-end data detox.
Yeah, someone who loves a good Marie Kondo style spring cleaning, data detox is a favorite topic of mine. We can think of data hygiene as operational hygiene. So accurate and organized data is going to help finance forecast confidently, reporting becomes reliable, and our PMs and creatives can stay aligned because everyone's working from the same information, right? So this year-end checklist that Sean mentioned will actually show up on the screen at the end. You can download it there. It offers concrete steps like archiving completed projects, merging duplicate records, deactivating X users, double-checking rate cards. The goal is to sweep the system so that no outdated or bad data lingers or misleads. We can consider a situation here that I've heard time and time again from agencies. Multiple client records for the same client exist under slightly different spellings, something like that. And if left unchecked, then projects, billing, reporting could be misaligned for weeks or months. Creates confusion across teams and then headaches when trying to reconcile later. So the takeaway here, clean data reduces downstream chaos. So I'll say look up for that checklist at the end of the webinar. These are the things that pay dividends across reporting, forecasting, and decision-making. So Lori, Mike, a question for you here from your experience consulting with agencies. Which type of data issue, be it client records, timesheets, otherwise, causes the most downstream chaos?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about some of these questions prior to the session today, and all of these are important, no doubt. But in my mind, especially today, I think with agencies and what we are kind of facing in our industry, rates. Making sure that your rates are up to date, making sure that your rates are appropriate for the kind of work you do and the clients that you serve. Make sure that your rates are enough to cover your overhead and allow you to make a profit. I think if we're not starting off on the right foot when it comes to our rates and our estimates, we have no chance of succeeding. And of course, all of these other things like timesheets feed into that. But if we don't have the right rates, if we're not starting from the right frame of reference, it is very hard to move forward and be profitable. And these days, agencies need every bit of billing that they can get. And I don't mean that to say, hey, we're in trouble or we're going away, but all of us have to face the reality that our industry looks different. And we have to fight for every dollar that we have. So we better make sure that those rates are enough to allow us to perform and survive and make a profit. Many of you, maybe review your rates every few years. Some, I dare say, might be even longer. And every year at the end of the year, this is one of the things you have to do. Do the formula, do the math. If you don't change your rates, fine, but at least know what your gap is between what you're charging and what you should be charging before moving into that new year. So again, while all of these are important in my mind, really have to get our arms around the rates that we are charging and making sure they are appropriate for our agency and the financial situation that we are in.
Beautiful, thank you. So yeah, I'll underscore that when we're talking year end, I'll just invite everyone again to take that time, save that time early by taking those small, consistent cleanup steps, like regular reviews of timesheet data, et cetera, but reviews of the rate cards or client records as well.
Yeah.
I will stay on the same topic for a second, just underscoring that a messy data isn't just a technical problem, it's a confidence problem. Duplicated clients, as mentioned, also outdated rates, missing timesheets. These can make reports and decisions suspect. It can also amount to a huge time sink. Your team might be wasting hours, let's say, verifying numbers instead of actually acting on them. And then leadership may hesitate when planning if they don't fully trust the data. So turning to our panel, a question for you, Craig. What would you say is one practical way to tackle system cleanup when you're already busy, like you mentioned, with active projects at the end of the year?
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to be large enough to have people whose role, essentially cleanup is a major component. So, part of their yearly work that they do is cleaning up the data and making sure that that is accurate. And that's something that we've built into our process because we noticed that at the end of the year, the mountain of stuff that we had to clean up is too much for us to handle. And then it would take us 6 months into the next year just to catch up to the cleanup that we had back in December. So with our levels of traffic managers and project managers that we have, part of their role is making sure they're cleaning it up throughout the year, making sure the data is accurate throughout the entire year rather than having to worry about it at the end of the year. And that's something that ultimately has really changed a lot for us because we're able to put more of that time at the end of the year into planning for the future rather than doing things like cleaning up and like that.
Yeah. Well, and Craig, I'll just add to that. The fact that you're doing that on an ongoing basis allows you to have the knowledge at your fingertips to redirect if you need to during the year. If you're seeing that your forecast or the agency is not moving in the direction in which you had thought it would during that time period, you have real, live, actionable, correct data to be able to use to make those decisions. And you can make them with more confidence and more quickly than if you're not confident in the data that you have.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, awesome. Craig, Lori, thank you for those insights. I am going to hand it back to Sean, but just to our audience here, please feel free to share your team's cleanup strategies as well. We'd love to hear what works for you and your team, at your end, but also through the year in incremental steps, as both Lori and Craig have mentioned.
Awesome, Alec. Thank you so much. And yeah, folks. I mean, just very operational session so far, sort of talking about some of the best practices we should be putting in place just to make sure that we are starting that, that next year successfully. Speaking of operations, Lori, right before we started, I believe you have a webinar coming up the second wind around operations as well. Is that correct?
We do. We have an operations seminar actually on December 4th, which is geared to a lot of these topics as well, helping agencies understand the best way to manage their operations and workflow for efficiency and profitability. So we do have that coming up. And Sean, as I mentioned, I would love to send a discount code to any attendee today to attend that seminar if they are available.
Awesome. Lori, thank you so much. We'll absolutely take advantage of that. And folks, just pay attention to that follow-up email. We'll make sure that goes out to you. Wonderful. One other thing I'll mention, folks, just about operations, in terms of that data cleanup, again, tons of resources that are out there. Wouldn't be a good operations director if I didn't pitch a little bit for us as well. We do have an entire professional services department here. So if you are looking at that mound of data that needs a bit of cleanup, honestly, reach out to us, folks. Don't sit there and struggle by yourselves. We literally have a team that is here to help you with that. So if there are any sort of concerns, if you need some cleanup, reach out to us. Let's have a conversation.
Just
All right.
to,
So
if I
what's going on?
could piggyback on that, Sean, we have done that with you guys,
That's right. You have,
and
Craig.
we've done that a couple times, I think, and it was a
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
lifesaver because yeah, you're looking at this amount of data that like in the past we didn't analyze it, we didn't care about it, we just hey just dump it there and we'll move on. We don't. It's not important information to us, and then one day that information becomes important, and you're like, oh no, what did we do? So we have used your service a couple of times, and I got to tell you, everyone on the call, it was a lifesaver. It went extremely smoothly, and it was something that really saved us about probably 2 months of work. It was fantastic.
I swear to God, folks, we did not pay Craig for that. So Craig, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Yeah, but again, folks, if you have those concerns, make sure you reach out. We're here to support you. All right, guys, moving on to the next topic here. We do have about 40 minutes to get through and a lot more slides, so I'll try to pick up the pace here a little bit. Right, just in terms of uncovering lost billable time, again, this is part and parcel with the overall theme today, folks. Just making sure that we are operationally sound for the next year. We have talked about this throughout, I think, 2 of the webinars that we've done this year, which is that silent profit killer, which is that untracked time. I know folks don't like tracking time. We did put an ebook out earlier this year called Burnout to Balance, and it really highlights the fact that over-servicing is probably the most silent thief of profitability in all small agencies. Mm-hmm. That might be something like, a bit of scope creep. It could be that you're trying to service an agency because you're hoping that it's going to lead to further work down the road. But at the end of the day, folks, those unbilled hours are going to eat into your margins faster than any additional software subscription or any additional overhead cost will. I'm going to put this one over to Lori specifically, because I know you've worked with lots of agencies with this, but have you ever been in a situation where you've ever recovered a decent amount of lost revenue just by doing a year-end audit?
Absolutely. And, it doesn't always come from the same place. As you said, There's lots of places where we can hunt for the dollars or hours that weren't billed. And depending on your agreement or situation with the client, some of that may or may not be able to be recouped. I mean, obviously, we want to try to recoup as much as possible. But I do think, obviously, tracking our jobs and going back and looking at all of them in terms of were we under, were we over, were we on the button, and determine why. I mean, we want to do, even throughout the year, kind of this post-mortem exercise to determine how did our jobs end in terms of profitability and make changes throughout the year. But I think the end of the year is also a good time to go back and revisit that and make sure that we're still incorporating those learnings. One place with one agency in particular I can mention where there was a lot of money that was sitting on the table was unbilled vendor invoices to clients. They had no real process in place for tracking POs or making sure the client was billed or making sure the client was billed properly. There was about $50,000 sitting there in uncollected money because vendor charges had not been billed to the client. So that's that's one that I think over the years, if you don't have an appropriate PO system in place to kind of match those expenses, you can, be left holding the bag on some of those costs. And now with the fact that we use a lot of vendors and use a lot of freelancers, make sure, you're using the tools that you have to track those expenses. And then again, I think as with projects or jobs, we have to make sure we're looking at our retainers. And again, those are always on an ongoing basis. We want to be watching those, but, especially at the end of the year, is there money that we haven't spent? And if so, how are we going to handle that? What are we going to do with that? Or did we overservice, as Sean said, and do we have a contingency in place where we can bill the client for that? I think regular eyes on all of these aspects on an ongoing basis will help you uncover potentially unbilled hours or unbilled dollars to make sure that you are as whole as possible as you can be at the end of the year. So do it regularly, but revisit it again at the end of the year to make sure we're not missing anything or not addressing areas that we should focus on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lori. Yeah, I mean, it's so important just to really do that deep audit at the end of the year and really see where that profit is coming from and where it's going. And I'll I always remember back to one of my earlier jobs in software. We had a very, very large customer that we worked with, and everyone was very excited until year end, until we realized that, we were sinking just dollar after dollar into this customer, and it wasn't profitable, right? We would have never uncovered that had we not taken the time to do that year end audit. So just so important, just from a business point of view.
Yes, and uncovering something like that, Sean, might lead the agency to a further conversation of, are we going to continue with this client? Can we continue with this client, or do we need to rework our compensation structure with them?
Yeah, 100%. Laura, thank you so much. Lori, we're probably going to keep you with you on this one, if that's okay. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that we certainly try to push as much as possible here is the process of time tracking, because really this gives you that accuracy in terms of figuring out, hey, am I actually overserving? Am I actually overservicing this group? Am I not putting enough time with this person? So, really doing that year-end audit, taking a look specifically at those timesheets and those profitability reports, super important. But I also completely understand that it is a uphill battle a lot of the time trying to get folks to track time in general. So, Lori, from your point of view, when you're trying to advise teams, what do you do to get creative groups to see time tracking as a positive instead of, sort of a big brother punishment sort of thing?
Yes. Well, I think a lot of it just comes down to education and knowledge. I think if the team is asked to do something that they don't understand the context for, or they don't understand the relevance to how entering my time into a timesheet may impact not only my life, but the greater life of the agency. Simply asking children or people to do things. When you ask your child to do something without context, sometimes they push back on it. It's the same way, I think, with adults and employees. So anything you can do to educate your team about why we track time, the decisions we make by having access to that data. We're able to see our workload. We're able to protect you and make sure that we are assigning the appropriate body of work, the appropriate amount of work. It allows us to make decisions about staffing. It allows us to make decisions about bringing on new clients. So we're not all just running around, working ourselves into the ground. We're working within some kind of constraints and method, and time tracking happens to be a part of that. People balk, I think, for two reasons. First of all, it's just kind of a pain in the neck to have to track your time. And second of all, they feel like it is Big Brother watching every move that they make. So in addition to education, and I think tools like Function Fox and Function Point do this well, that is to make the process as seamless and or as painless as possible. And the more they do it on a regular basis, the more successful they are going to be. And it's going to just become a part of their daily habits. And I say daily because I think time needs to be tracked daily. It can't be tracked weekly or bi-weekly or whatever. So education, Sean, I think is one of the most important aspects of this, and then giving them the right tools to be able to accomplish that successfully.
Fantastic insight, Laura. I couldn't agree with you more. The why, right? I'm sure a lot of us do have kids. I am a relatively new parent. I know Alec is a relatively new parent as well. But oh man, if you forget the why, trying to explain stuff, that's when you get into a world of trouble. It's the same thing, human nature in general. Always give the why. Craig, any insight from your team? I mean, you guys do a great job of getting folks to track time as well. Any insights or tips and tricks you can give to the group just to get folks motivated so they are doing that on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Lori is saying. That is the exact same answer, probably better stated, but it's the exact same answer that I would have given. She just said it better, probably. I think the main components for us is just making sure that they know this is not a punitive thing. We're not doing this to in any way look at what you're doing and say there's punishments there because you went over hours on this, or you're doing this wrong, or you shouldn't be on that. It's entirely just to, realistically, we're trying to get the right amount of time on our estimates for you to be able to do your job without being rushed. We want you to have the right support. We want to make sure there's enough of people in your role so you aren't working 12-hour days. All of that is built in there to help. To help the people. And we are, again, same with Lori, daily. They have to input their time daily. And we've gone through many, many different ways of trying to incentivize people to track their time. The best one, the most expensive, but best one was we would, in 2-week blocks, I think it was, the people who successfully entered their time every day for that 2-week block. We got a big wheel and we would spin the wheel, and whoever's name it would land on got a gift card to Amazon. So we tried to incentivize it in that way. And it doesn't have to be a ton of money, but it's just a dumb little thing that you get to do to kind of incentivize, put your time in. Ultimately, it's for your help. It is not in any way for us to come to you and then yell at you for not doing something correctly. We're trying to make sure that our estimates are accurate to the time it takes and all of that good stuff. So in that rambling answer, I think it's basically exactly what Lori said.
I do like the Wheel of Fortune idea, Craig, though. That's
yeah. That was fun. And people would get really into it, overly into it probably. And it wasn't a ton of money, but there was, people chanting and screaming and all that good stuff. It was like a silly, 10 minutes every couple of weeks. So it worked amazingly.
You don't want your name to not be on that board, so you're probably more likely to enter your time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Fantastic. I might steal that myself. All right, folks, let's pass it back over to Alec, and we're going to talk about financial reconciliation.
Yeah, the least glamorous, but arguably the most important part of year end here. So accurate reconciliation is going to ensure that your project budgets, timesheets, invoices, expenses all align before that crucial new year begins. It's our common refrain here, but here too, we find that without this, decisions are going to be made in the dark, forecasts can be unreliable, small errors can cascade into big headaches for everyone down the line. So that year-end checklist that we mentioned, it breaks it into step by step here. So reconciling budgets, finalizing timesheets and expenses, close ARA and AP, export your key financial reports. This is your playbook for getting everything accounted for and ready to start fresh in the new year. So with reporting in mind, I do have a question for you, Lori. In your consulting, what would you say is your go-to report for spotting financial blind spots before closing the books?
Well, I mean, I would say obviously there are multiple, but
yeah,
utilization by role, by individual, probably gives us the most granular look at how we've used our resources. Have we used them effectively? Is there a way to use them better? And what have we missed, during that year time? So for me, utilization gives a very deep dive into how we are acting and behaving and performing at the agency. That does translate to earning dollars or ultimately losing dollars. But, in addition, I think we should really be looking at our forecasted versus our actual revenue. And when you do those forecasts as well, I feel that you should look at your revenue by service line, try to determine how much we can make in each service line, determine how that correlates with our people and the staff that we have. Is that feasible? Is that realistic? I mean, we can't do $1 million in web work if we don't have the right web team or don't have a web team. So I think all of these kind of combined, forecast versus actual, lets us kind of then reorganize for the next year, but overlaying that with utilization in our staff and the tasks that they have put their time into versus the tasks that they haven't or weren't able to put their time into. So I think those two combined, certainly there are others, but we'll give you kind of a picture of how we perform, who we are, where our skill set is versus, the reality of our forecasted versus our actual. Are those two things in alignment for moving us into, the coming year?
Well, brilliant. And at this crucial time right now, I will just echo that sentiment, because we have included out of the box with Function Point. If you are an agency that uses Function Point, estimated versus actual reporting and utilization reporting are available with our BI module. Open it up, the reports are there. So feel free to take a look, any agencies listening, or reach out to your CSM. We'd be happy to help you get set up with those reports so you can start driving those insights. This topic takes us to some guidance from another resource that we are going to circulate at the end of today's webinar, which is a guide called From Gut Feeling to Data Driven. And that guidance is that when the business side runs on accurate, transparent information, your teams are free to focus on the creative work. So I'll just say, if the numbers don't align, you're flying blind. Which, hearing that out loud kind of sounds like a Johnny Cochran quote, but it's true. If the numbers don't align, you're flying blind. Leadership can't plan with confidence. You end up chasing discrepancies instead of doing actual creative work. Locking the books cleanly gives everyone a clear view of performance, sets the agency up for a strong Q1. And hey, even small oversights can cause big headaches, which is why consistent reconciliation is essential, which sets up my next question for our panel. Sticking actually with you for another finance question, Lori, what's one small oversight that you've seen that consistently causes big reconciliation headaches?
Well, I think job status, not keeping up with, entering our data into the system. If we don't know if things are closed, if we don't know if things are open, we do not have the access to the appropriate real-time information. As I mentioned before, things like POs that are not reconciled or closed out, I think can cause issues with those year-end numbers. Not using most up-to-date information, especially when it comes to things like rate cards. If we're still using different rates across different projects and we are, not all in alignment there. So, I think, again, there's lots of aspects that we have to look at when it comes to reconciliation, and probably the biggest issue that people have is not doing it regularly. Yes, we need to do a big end of the year, but again, I feel like making sure that we are doing all of these things regularly and having a checklist, like you mentioned earlier, for year-end closeout, having a regular checklist for our regular reconciliations, because in my mind, a financial manager at an agency, big or small, principal or somebody else who's doing that, should at the end of every month allow themselves the ability to see those reports, to be looking for certain highlights, to have insights and have a package of information that we can use as we move through the year, again, to make decisions, moving us from one month to the next. But, again, at the end of the year, we're going to do a deeper dive potentially on that than we do throughout the year. And I think just those are some of the areas that stick out to me. Not one in particular that's an overriding issue, but some of those areas stick out to me where some of the problems are.
Well, I appreciate that, Lori. And it's interesting to hear you call out project or job status. Perhaps you wouldn't be surprised. I'm always surprised seeing how many agencies aren't actively closing their projects as the projects are completed. When we get to our reporting, or perhaps these multi-year cleanups, we find that there's perhaps hundreds of projects that are looking open in the system. It's just chaos. Thank you for that. I'm conscious we are short on time. So Sean, my friend, back to you. Let's forge on here.
Alec, thank you so much. All right, folks, because again, I want to make sure we have some Q&A at the end here. We're actually going to go right into something that I think is super important for the next year's planning, which is system tune-ups. Really what we mean by this is that most folks have quite a decent amount of stuff in their tech stack. Let's just say that. One thing that we always say is that the right technology, it's not a luxury. It really is a necessity for running that well-oiled creative operation. So again, we'll have platforms like Function Point, Function Fox, but there's also platforms, digital asset management. Folks might be using media purchasing, quite a few different tools out there. Craig, looking at your group, what do you guys do to prevent tool sprawl? So basically having folks using too many different platforms, doing very similar things, or not quite doing enough, and folks just basically trying to scaffold. What do you guys do to keep that in check?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's something that we have had issues with in the past, and we've kind of locked down the ability for people to just be able to start using a new tool without at least having a conversation about it. And we have a couple people. We have a director of innovation. We have myself. We have our IT staff, and we have some of the supervisors of the departments who will have a conversation about, okay, so someone is requesting this for whatever reason. Do we have anything that does that? If it performs that task. Does it do it well? Is this one better? So we kind of just have a conversation about it. And by the end of the conversation, depending on, it could be 10 minutes, it could be an hour, depending on what the software is. We either agree with like, I think the better way is to stick with this tool we already have, or we kind of do like a trial run and say, okay, you start using it for this. Let's see how you feel in about 2 or 3 weeks. We'll revisit and see if it's really working up to what you thought it would be. And then if it is, maybe it's something we expand greater.
Fantastic. Great way to approach it. Love the trial aspect as well. Just jumping on to the next slide here. So again, sort of taking a look at that tech sprawl that can happen. One of the ebooks that we did earlier this year was called From Burnout to Balance. And we did really touch on this topic because, again, with Lori, you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar today, the industry has changed. I mean, there are so many different tools available now. With the advent of AI, things are continuing to evolve that way. So it's very easy to get a very, very bloated tech stack very quickly. Systems don't need to be complex to be effective. Sometimes simplicity really is best, right? Sort of limiting that tech stack, breaking it down to what is most necessary. Lori, for you, when you're advising groups, I guess when you're evaluating those new tools, what sort of criteria do you usually help to decide whether or not you should be integrating this, or if this is something that you might need to actually sunset with the agency?
Right. Well, I'll start off by saying that agencies are a unique group because when they look at systems, not only do they want them to be functional, but they want them to be beautiful.
Yep.
Sometimes agencies get caught up a little bit in the look of a system versus the actual functionality that it brings to the table. So, agencies are looking at a wide variety of systems, whether it is a workflow system or time tracking or accounting system. And sometimes these work together and sometimes they don't, just depending on the legacy software that the agency may have. But I think when making decisions about tools, first and foremost, I think that you have to look at a variety of options. Don't overdo it, but hone in on 3 or 4 systems that might fill the need that you are looking to fill, and make sure that you're looking at some options so that you can evaluate them side by side. And before you even get to that stage, and I think this is probably more what Sean is going for, is make sure you understand why you need a tool. Make sure you do that legwork first in-house and do an audit of what you already have and how it's meeting the needs and how it may not be meeting the needs. And make sure that you have really defined that well, because any tool out there can, between the lines, tell you that it can do what you want it to do. And that may not necessarily be true. So the more defined you are in what you need and how that's going to help with efficiency or help reduce redundant steps or help increase clarity, whatever that might be, the more refined and defined that is, the better job you'll be able to do when you are out there assessing systems. And remember, look and feel is important, but to me, functionality trumps that. In the end, we really need systems to do what we want them to do.
Fantastic insight, Lori. And I mean, the one thing I'll always say for folks as well, when looking at a tool in general, sort of getting back to that whole aspect of simplicity, if everyone could just picture Excel in their minds for a second, it's not the prettiest looking thing in the world. G Suite's the same thing, not the most beautiful looking product, but can you picture getting through your day without it, right? I mean, if you're a designer, okay, you're probably off doing something amazing. But for lots of us that are dealing with numbers on a regular basis, can you imagine trying to go through without Excel? It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to work, right? So totally get it. Great, folks. I'm actually going to put it back to you, Alec, just to sort of drive us home with this.
Yeah, as we wrap up, let's finally act on those resources we mentioned that we're going to share with you today. The first is our year-end system cleanup and reporting checklist. You mentioned, heard us mention a few times. So you actually request a copy of the checklist at the link on your screen now. You should hopefully see it. We will also circulate it in the email, of course, after today. But this isn't just a task list. This is a framework for turning year-end work into a strategic advantage. All the tips we've mentioned today, archiving completed projects, resolving duplicates, updating rates, etc., might seem like housekeeping, but done consistently, it builds clarity and trust in reporting and and forecasting. So feel free to incorporate this to or compare it to your existing year-end process. And then the second resource here, which I'll just switch to, is a guide called From Gut Feeling to Data Driven, How to Evolve Your Decision-Making Culture. And you can follow the link on your screen to request it, but the guide offers some useful strategies on becoming more data-driven as an agency, which of course is relevant at our year end here. So with that in mind, I have one closing question for our panel, and I'll put it to you both, but perhaps to Craig first. What's one thing you wish more agencies understood about using data to drive decisions?
It's a very good question. I think everyone knows that data is important, right? Everyone knows that measuring your performance, being able to see a tangible number that is measuring something and being able to make decisions are important. I think that is, 90% of what you should be using to make decisions. I don't think you should get rid of your gut, however. I think there's something to be said about using your gut in situations that warrant it. And there are times where the numbers didn't look like they were pointing a certain way. And we decided to make a pivot based on a gut feeling that something was going to either change or was already changing. And a lot of those times, I'm telling you, it paid off. So you have to trust your gut in a lot of situations. However, don't always trust your gut. You can't just throw darts at a wall and just hope you hit eventually. You have to use the data that you've constantly been building up, make those informed decisions. But yeah, definitely there are times when you want to trust your gut.
Yeah.
Fair counterpoint, and that's not to say that to never trust your gut at all. Make informed decisions and depend on those those years or decades of industry experience and agency experience to drive your decision making as well.
Yes.
So Lori, I'll just put the same question to you. What's one thing you wish more agencies understood about using data or your gut to drive decisions?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we rely on data and we rely on insight to make decisions for our clients. We don't just go out there and say, oh, hey, Mr. Client, I think you should do that because it feels right. Clients hold us to a higher standard, and that is uncovering through research and data insights that allow us to make appropriate decisions for them to help them meet their goals. We need to do the same thing for us. Data is our friend. Data is always changing, so you can't kind of take your eye off that ball. I agree with Craig 100%. It is part data and part gut. The longer you're in this industry, the longer you're running your business, the more your gut strengthens. But you still need to use that data and that insight. It will ultimately, for not only our clients, which we know, and we do that for them every day, but will also support and bring better results for us as agencies and as businesses. So I implore all of you to rely on the data you have, collect it copiously and accurately, and you'll find you are able to make better decisions and reach those goals with more confidence.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And I can see that resonating with agencies in attendance here. So Sean, I'm mindful we have just a few minutes, so maybe I'll hand it to you for a quick round of Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alec. All right, folks. So Q&A is open. So folks, if there's any questions that you have for either Craig, for Lori, for Alec, for myself, please feel free to throw them into the chat there. We've got a few minutes to hang out. I did want to call out one question or comment specifically in the chat from Robin up in the Northwest Territories. Robin, hi, how are you? Glad that you're not freezing. Things can look pretty and work. All I can say, folks, stay tuned. We've got some interesting stuff coming. Stay tuned.
I agree in full, Robin. They can.
Well, perhaps while we're letting folks submit a couple questions, I have one, and I hate to be a broken record here, but question to the panel. If we could only implement one thing from today's discussion, what would you recommend starting with?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think for us, it was really a game changer once we started that cleaning up your data as you go. To Lori's point earlier, she mentioned about how that allows you to go, in February, in March, and April, my data is accurate and I can make decisions based on that. I don't have to wait until we clean it up in December. So cleaning it up as you go, it doesn't have to be clean tomorrow. You don't have to, if you've got a whole bunch of stuff piled up, it doesn't have to be clean tomorrow, but start on that process of getting everything cleaned up data-wise, and then start doing it throughout the year. It's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with Craig. I also really like his, the way they handle it in their agency, where the AMs or the PMs are accountable for that. So if you don't assign that responsibility to anyone or any individual, it's likely not going to get done. So I think thinking about accountability, who in the agency could be responsible for that, even if you're a smaller firm, somebody can take that on to do that on a regular basis. And then I would, again, as I said earlier, just because of kind of where we are these days with the agency businesses, just take the time at the end of this year to do the simple exercise of looking at your rates and looking at the way you're compensated, and make sure that you're heading into 2026 with that all in alignment. Because if you're not charging enough now, you could earn more in 2026 by increasing your rates. Not all clients are going to love that, but hey, we're in business to make a profit. So we have to implement rate increases every now and then as well. So I would encourage everyone to do that, in addition to making a proactive play to bring accountability to cleaning up the data and keeping it in good order.
Well, wonderful. I hate to have monopolized the Q&A time myself. I think I have managed to stay on top of the questions in the chat as we were chatting. So let's just say that's the end of our webinar for today, folks. We appreciate you all tuning in. A huge thank you to our panelists, Lori Mikus and Craig Cardellino, for sharing your expertise and insights. Lori, I'm sure our agencies in attendance are going to keep an eye out for details about Second Wind's upcoming seminar. But until then, until the new year, we'll say take care. Wish you all best of luck in your agency's year ends, and enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays, folks. So much for being
Appreciate
here. Janessa, one quick comment from Janessa. Janessa, we'll follow up with you. It's a Function Fox question about automatic reporting. So lots of good stuff on the agenda. All right, folks, thank you so much. Amazing year. Craig, thank you again for being with us for 3 of these so far. I can't believe it's been 3. Lori, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be, I'm sure, connecting again in the new year. But folks, have a wonderful holiday season. For those that are starting to peel off for Thanksgiving, eat lots of turkey. Enjoy yourselves, be with the folks you love, and looking forward to a fantastic 2026. Thanks, everyone.
All right.